As a mangaka at Type Moon Chapter 141 to 150, 141, Unlimited Blade Works. Kazuya didn't rush to the scene. As usual, he carefully stored the original script with alchemy, washed his face to freshen up, and then rushed towards Ryudu Temple nearby. He touched the command spells on his hand and took a deep breath. For what comes next? I summon him with 3 command spells. If it's him, even facing 3 heroic spirits simultaneously should end the battle. Though it might be a bit hard to control. No, quite challenging. But I only need to assert control over this body for a while. That should be enough. Boom, boom. In the sky, lightning flashed, and Kazuya saw clearly on the horizon Rider's noble phantasm, Gordius Wheel, speeding through the air. I didn't expect Rider and them to be so close. Perfect. When I arrive, I'll take care of them all. Kazuya thought, increasing his speed as he rushed ahead. At this distance, there was no need for a vehicle, running was faster. A chariot? King of Conquerors? Archer quickly stepped back. Berserker also halted nearby. Even though the 2 of them had been in combat for a while, neither had been injured. Archer found it challenging to kill Berserker unexpectedly without using his reality marble. However, the occasional sneak attack on the Greater Grail was enough to prevent Berserker from going all out. Haha, it seems Castor hasn't arrived yet. I'm curious about the power he'll bring this time. King of Conqueror's chariot stopped atop the ruins of Ryudu Temple, laughing. The next moment, Archer and Emiya Kiritsugu, who was watching from a distance with his sniper rifle, both narrowed their eyes. Their focus was on the woman in the King of Conqueror's chariot. Irisveal? Emiya Kiritsugu gritted his teeth, thinking it couldn't be. Irisveal wasn't supposed to be in Fuyuki City, he had kept her hidden. Moreover, Maya was with her, and if anything had gone wrong, there should have been a call. So what was happening? No. Waver quickly realized what Archer was thinking and said, this isn't Irisveal. She's a new Lesser Grail sent by Ainsburn. After all, that mage killer, Emiya Kiritsugu, didn't bring her here, right? With her here, there's no need to continue the Holy Grail war. So, we prepared a Lesser Grail, and now it feels like the right time, so we brought her here. Archer, get that homunculus, Emiya Kiritsugu said, communicating through his connection with Archer. He could understand what Waver was saying. In general, according to the manga created by Kurokawa Kazuya at the intervention of Wizard Marshall, he wasn't supposed to do anything like this, especially with King of Conquerors nearby. But, although Wizard Marshall had said this, King of Conquerors might really have that kind of personality. But even so, Emiya Kiritsugu couldn't afford to take the risk. He had already put everything on the line, and now, he didn't want to lose anything more. I understand. Archer said, beginning to chant the incantation for his reality marble, I am the bone of my sword. Slow down. I'm telling the truth. It's really like that, Waver hurriedly said. Steel is my body, and fire is my blood. No, it looks like this guy has made up his mind and doesn't believe it. King of Conquerors intervened, blocking Waver who wanted to say more. Fine. Let me see what you bear, bearing all your burdens. I have created over 1,000 blades. Roar! Berserker, sensing the familiar danger, roared and charged towards Archer. Unknown to death, nor known to life. In the distance, Emiya Kiritsugu called Maya on the phone to confirm the situation here with her. Ro Ayas. Boom. Berserker's full force attack struck the purple shield. Archer chanted while backing away. I have withstood pain to create many weapons. Maya, is everything okay on your end? Emiya Kiritsugu asked quickly upon connecting the call. Yes, everything's fine. Madam and Miss are both safe. Is something wrong? Maya inquired with a hint of confusion. No, nothing. Emiya Kiritsugu sighed in relief. Let Irisveal take the call. However, even so, there was no need to give up. After all, Archer had fully completed his incantation, and now was the time to try to deal with Berserker and Rider. No harm in attempting it. Yet, those hands will never hold anything. Phew, that was close. L almost missed it again. Wind mode. Kazuya used hid leg to activate this technique from Pillar Man, Wamu, momentarily increasing his speed as he reached out for Archer. So as I pray. Unlimited blade works, boom. The earth seemed to crumble, and the space underwent a transformation. In an instant, the ruins of Ryugu Temple turned into a wasteland filled with infinite swords. It looks like I caught up this time, Kazuya said with a slight smile. Within the reality marble of unlimited blade works. Himself, Berserker, Rider, Archer, all of the currently existing heroic spirits were gathered here. On the other side, Archer, who had activated the reality marble, received the message passed on by Emiya Kiritsugu and let out a small sigh of relief. As you can see, this is unlimited blade works, and don't think that what you saw in that manga represents my full strength. I'm much stronger now than I was back then. 142. The Ancient King. Haha, that's just perfect. Rider laughed. This kind of battle is what qualifies as a decisive showdown, right? So, Caster, are you going to summon a character worthy of such a battle, or are you going to take this on yourself? While it's not a bad idea to handle it myself, unfortunately, it seems that I'm nothing more than a third-rate heroic spirit without that ability. I can't participate directly, Kazuya said, raising his right hand. The traces of command spells on his arm were shimmering. So, to bring an end to all of this, I've decided to use 3 command spells. Crackling. The next moment. Kazuya furrowed his brow slightly. What's going on? Wasn't he supposed to use 3 command spells? Why are only 2 of them glowing? Swish, swish, swish. In the next instant, countless swords rained down towards Kazuya. I won't just stand here and watch you complete your summoning. It looks like you're in quite a bit of trouble. Clang, clang, clang. However, the relentless barrage of noble phantasms was blocked by a red barrier in front of Kazuya. It was as if a shield had appeared to protect him. The red light turned into gold, and soon a figure was revealed inside. A good show, I suppose, fitting for the stage of summoning me, said the figure. Isn't it difficult? Rider expressed some surprise. I didn't expect you could summon even the King of Heroes. Indeed, this time, Kazuya had intended to summon Gilgamesh, the King of Heroes. Originally, his plan was to summon him and take control of his body forcefully, activating EA to end the battle in one swift move. But now it seemed things had taken a slightly different turn. Kazuya was somewhat surprised. Why did he manage to summon him with just 2 command spells? His ability had explicitly stated that it required 3 command spells to summon the King of Heroes. The time limit was 30 minutes, and there were restrictions on using his noble phantasms. Gilgamesh he summoned only possessed the abilities he displayed in Fate, 0, and most of his treasury of unlimited noble phantasms could only be fired and not used in other ways, with the exception of a few like Vimana, Chains of Heaven, and Enuma Elish. In other words, his abilities was significantly limited. This was why Kazuya thought he needed 3 command spells for the summoning. However, in practice, he had succeeded with just 2. You mongrel, isn't it simple? The ones you summoned before were non-existent from the start. But I am different. I truly exist in this world. Hence, you can save a few command spells. Gilgamesh's words explained his confusion, letting Kazuya regret his choices. If only he had known that this world was more command spell efficient, he would have summoned the world's heroic spirits. It was such a waste to have spent 2 command spells like that. Just think about it, and it felt a bit heartbreaking. 2 command spells. No, he was wrong. Kazuya slowly calmed down. According to the setting of his ability, even if he summoned characters of these 2 ranks, it would still require 2 command spells, just with a longer duration. Slightly more unique characters typically needed 3 command spells to summon. Their situation was already pretty good. Alright, no need to overthink it. Let's try talking first, and if it doesn't work, he'll directly take control of his body and activate Aya. Then he'll end the battle. King of Heroes, can you help me eliminate the heroic spirits in front of us? Why else do you think I responded to you? Gilgamesh replied with a smile. I'm just idle and bored. It's not every day I come across such an interesting scenario. Who are these? King of Conqueror? Faker? Heracles contaminated by black mud? Ha 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 ha. Oh, don't tell me you knew of my existence? Ryder said in surprise. You just come to this world, haven't you? HMPH, of course I have my methods. After all, this world has undergone such significant changes, a bit of attention is only natural. Gilgamesh's tone was full of amusement. This works out perfectly. Let me wipe all of you out in one go. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Saying that, countless rings of light appeared behind Gilgamesh, and one by one, his noble phantasms slowly emerged, exuding a dangerous aura. Really? I didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Archer shook his head. Oh, not bad, not bad. Ryder's eyes lit up. Seeing this many noble phantasms in reality is a completely different level of awe. Haha, this time I won't lose. In Kurokawa Kazuya's manga, there was no battle between Emiya and Gilgamesh. Because, there was no need for it. The other heroic spirits were added to the mix to prevent them from being taken out right away. Gilgamesh's role was already quite substantial. Some early additions to increase the style, a bit more art during the battle with the black mud, highlighting his carelessness, and then, it ended. Gilgamesh was a character who was both strong and weak. Strong to the point that it seemed like he could fight anyone. Weak to the point that it seemed like anyone could defeat him, which might sound a bit exaggerated, but the actual situation wasn't much different. The reason for this was his arrogance. However, now Gilgamesh's physical body was immortal, essentially making him invulnerable. Even if his heart and brain were pierced, he wouldn't die. And if he was to truly get carried away, Kazuya would immediately seize control of his body and find a way to kill Berserker multiple times. When his life was about to run out, he would clear the field with EA, ending the battle. Come on, let me see how much you weigh. Saying this, the rain of noble phantasms was aimed directly at the three heroic spirits. Waver, stay far away. Even I can't help you with this kind of attack. Ryder said, putting Waver down and charging ahead with his chariot noble phantasm. Alalalalala. The three heroic spirits launched their assaults against the world's most ancient king. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. 143. The King of Heroes. Roaring sounds filled the air as noble phantasms clashed with noble phantasms, lightning, and monsters. The three of them continued to close in on Gilgamesh, facing the onslaught of his noble phantasms. Archer continued projecting noble phantasms. Ryder's chariot sparkled with lightning as he used his sword to deflect countless noble phantasms. Around him, Berserker needed no protection, no need to safeguard any existence. He roared while charging at Gilgamesh with his massive sword. And then, the first one reached him. Roar. Berserker roared, and the patterns on his body granted him immense strength. Boom. Cracks and shattering sounds echoed as Gilgamesh's shields appeared in front of him, blocking Berserker's attack. But Berserker's strength was overwhelming. The shields rapidly began to crumble and shatter under the intense force. Bang! The next moment, Berserker jumped back, and countless chains surrounded him from all directions. Chains of heaven. And then, bang, bang, bang. The clash of noble phantasms continued. Archer used his projected noble phantasm to momentarily block Gilgamesh's noble phantasms, but it was a challenging feat even for an archer of his caliber. This time, King of Heroes used some of the most powerful noble phantasms to cause damage to Berserker. It was a level of projection that even the current archer found strenuous. In the end, a faker remains a faker. This is the best you can do, isn't it? King of Conqueror, how long do you plan to continue like this? Gilgamesh inquired. Well, I'm not sure what to do for now. Is using the reality marble inside a reality marble safe? King of Conqueror contemplated, gazing at Berserker. Roar. It seems you're a persistent beast, eagerly awaiting your own death, Gilgamesh said as he unleashed a rain of noble phantasms again. At the same time, multiple shields appeared in front of him, and he slightly stepped back. Berserker was indeed formidable. Even with so many noble phantasms attacking, Berserker didn't need protection and could deflect most of them on his own. Besides, he didn't die even when fatally pierced. Even if he did, he had the ability to continue the battle, which gave him incredible endurance, along with his 12 labors. Gilgamesh, at the moment, couldn't take him down. It's finally ready. Archer raised a sword. This sword was called Excalibur. Of course, it was a projection with a reduced rank. Meanwhile, outside the reality marble, Emiya Kiritsugu had only one command spell left on his hand. Huff. Archer let out a faint breath. His spiritual core had started to crumble on a small scale. The part he had previously restored with a command spell was inherently fragile, so if he wanted to recover it now, he estimated he would need to use 2 more command spells. Therefore, this time, he didn't rely on Emiya Kiritsugu's assistance to restore his spiritual core. Instead, he replenished his mana. Previously, he had used his mana for the reality marble and the already prepared sword rain. But now, he projected the holy sword using the mana from the command spell provided by Emiya Kiritsugu. This is the final time. You can't resurrect now, Heracles. Be cautious, Gilgamesh. The situation isn't right, Kazuya quickly warned. Gilgamesh furrowed his brows, about to correct him for the lack of respect, but he suddenly turned and said, "Oh, I see. So this faker has some ideas." "Well, indeed," King of Conqueror agreed. In front of them was a downpour of swords, with all the blades concentrating behind him in the reality marble without their notice. And then, in an instant, all the swords were unleashed. But that's not all. In front of them, Archer also freed the noble phantasm in his hand, unleashing his holy sword. Before them was a flood of light, and behind them was a torrent of swords. This was Archer using all of his accumulated mana to perform the most powerful attack he could muster, enhanced by the support of one of Emiya Kiritsugu's command spells. This was his most potent strike. "Stop it, you mongrel, don't go out of control." But in contrast to these, what irritated Gilgamesh more was Kazuya controlling his head, looking back and forth between the flood of light in front and the flood of swords behind. Damn it! Shields. Countless shields. What he could do now was to utilize these. He couldn't unleash EA, he didn't want to use EA. And as for the others, while there might be noble phantasms in his treasury capable of withstanding this level of power, as he was summoned in his current state, he couldn't utilize them. At last, the shields blocked his vision. Kazuya and Archer stopped. "You mongrel, what were you doing just now?" "Nothing. It's a rare sight, so why not savor the moment?" "Tisk. Ga forget it. We don't have time for this," an irritated Gilgamesh said. But both parties were at ease. Kazuya had confidence in his immortality, while Gilgamesh believed in his own strength. With both sides having their treasures fully open, countless shields stood in front. One after the other shattered. Although unable to unleash their true names, it was beyond a doubt that all of these were high MNBAL Nala Bont. Ranked noble phantasms. It was unclear how much time passed. Everything came to an end. However, Gilgamesh's treasury had limited capacity. Gilgamesh blocked the attack, but his golden armor showed cracks and there were tiny cuts on his face. However, they quickly healed. "It seems this is my limit." Archer released his reality marble and said, "But, shouldn't you take a look behind you?" Roar. Since the attack from Archer didn't kill Berserker in his last moments, Berserker appeared behind Gilgamesh without warning. He swung his battle axe towards Gilgamesh's head, splattering blood everywhere. 144 An anomalous existence. Two noble phantasms piked through Heracles' chest. The axe sword in Heracles' hand smashed Gilgamesh's head completely. Blood sprayed. This might be a situation where both sides suffer, King of Conquerors sighed as he looked at the scene in front of him. "Rider, does this mean we've won?" Waver asked, looking at the current situation. It seemed like Berserker and Castor were both defeated. The remaining Archer had depleted his mana, and his spiritual core was about to collapse. Just this side remained, completely intact. Mana at its peak, command spells fully restored. "No. Wait, it's not over yet." Rider looked at the greater grail placed on the side and said, "If what the manga said is true, then the lesser grail should have appeared when there were only 2 heroic spirits left. But there's no sign of that happening now. There must be one of the 2 still alive. It's Castor, isn't it?" Archer said, "That guy seems to be immortal." "No. Indeed, he's immortal." Saying that, he looked towards Gilgamesh's direction. The king of heroes who had fallen to the ground was slowly getting up. The place where his head had collapsed was now restored. If it weren't for the part of the shoulder armor that had shattered, it would seem like he hadn't been injured at all. I told you, you shouldn't be careless, using EA right from the start. Wouldn't have been good, would it? If not for my body being somewhat special, you would have returned to the throne of heroes by now, Kazuya told Gilgamesh. Well, he could wait a little longer. Gilgamesh's summoning time was 30 minutes. There were still 26 minutes left. If it didn't end by the time there were about 10 minutes left, he would take action himself, considering that using Enuma Elish would reduce the time Gilgamesh, King of Heroes, could exist by 10 minutes according to the information he had received. What does it matter? Gilgamesh said with a smile. This is the only chance this king gives to challengers, or you could say victory is as commonplace to this king as eating and drinking, but failure is different. Occasionally failing once or twice, HMPH, it spices up life, doesn't it? Otherwise, wouldn't it be too boring? Crack, crack, crack. Saying that, Gilgamesh's armor shattered completely, revealing his upper body. However, there were no red patterns on it, because, summoning that Gilgamesh required 4 command spells. No. Now it seemed to require 3 command spells. At different periods, Gilgamesh exerted different effort, so the summoning method naturally differed. Gilgamesh summoned by Kazuya this time was the cheapest one. Well, so that's how it is, so to say, now only this king and you haven't fought. King of Conquerors laughed and said, this king is unprecedentedly powerful now. Assemble, my fellow compatriots. Caladbold too. At this moment, Archer had recovered his mana with the help of Emiya Kiritsugu's last command spells, and in an instant, he shot it out. The target was neither Gilgamesh nor the King of Conquerors but the Greater Grail. Ahum! The radiance of the reality marble covered everything in the next moment. Archer, Rider, and Gilgamesh were all enveloped in it. Only the arrow. That arrow unquestionably shot straight towards the Great Holy Grail. If it's like this, it's over. Archer watched as the reality marble slowly dissipated before him. Well, it's not enough. I didn't get to say it in the end, that word. Father. What a pity. It seems this time it's just the 2 of us left. And, behold, my unparalleled army. Gilgamesh looked around. This time, the army no longer came from just one direction. They surrounded Gilgamesh. Not far from where he stood closest was a soldier less than 10 meters away. Countless soldiers enclosed him in an instant. HMPH, I won't give you a chance to use that noble phantasm. Scum is still scum, Gilgamesh smiled, and countless noble phantasms, radiance appeared all around him. Don't tell me you think I only have EA. Let's rewind time slightly. Emiya Kiritsugu watched the arrow shooting towards the Greater Grail and slightly relaxed. With this, no one could stop it. The Greater Grail received this strike, and at least more than half of it would disintegrate. This was also thanks to that Karna. It directly evaporated the area on the Greater Grail, making the large cavity that was originally deeply buried underground exposed and much easier to deal with. Is that? The next moment, Emiya Kiritsugu's face changed as he watched. The arrow was blocked. There were many people who had been closely monitoring this, not just Emiya Kiritsugu, but also Kaneth and the Mages Association. After all, it was the time for the Lesser Grail to appear. Who would obtain the Holy Grail this time, and what wishes they might make, they didn't care. They only needed to do one thing. To determine the exact purpose of the Holy Grail. To ascertain whether the Holy Grail possessed the ability to continue the ley lines. If it did, the Mages Association could concentrate all their strength on the Holy Grail. But if they failed, the Mages Association's leadership couldn't make up their minds. To be precise, the Democratic faction and the neutral faction couldn't make a decision. However, achieving the Holy Grail solely through the noble faction where Kaneth belonged was a bit difficult. So, they wanted to use the data from this incident to convince the other 2 factions. In that case, all of the clock tower's power would be concentrated on making the Holy Grail descend once more. But, now, an arrow was shot. It aimed at the Greater Grail. Intent on destroying the Greater Grail. Damn you, Emiya Kiritsugu. Kaneth's face looked grim, but he no longer had the ability to block it. After all, that was an heroic spirit's noble phantasm, and he couldn't stop it now. Not to mention that he and the other members of the Mages Association were still quite a distance away. What's that? The arrow didn't explode but disappeared. Within the Greater Grail, a figure appeared. The noble phantasm shot by Archer dissolved into countless particles at the moment it touched that figure. It wasn't an explosion or anything else, it just dispersed into countless particles in the air and vanished. What is that? 145 Enuma Elish. Boom, boom, boom. The battle inside the reality marble remained unaffected by the events outside. The King of Heroes continued to unleash his noble phantasms. Ryder's army charged fearlessly, using their bodies to shield against the noble phantasms, aiming to reach him and stop his hands, preventing him from using his own noble phantasm, Enuma Elish. However, even so, the positions where one could stand beside a single person were limited, even the ones who could stand in front of Gilgamesh were limited. So, although he claimed to be facing tens of thousands of soldiers, in reality, he was only facing a dozen or so. The reign of noble phantasms was faster than the soldiers' advance. But not every noble phantasm would take out a soldier. Among this endless sea of soldiers, some were as valiant as the King of Conqueror, and perhaps, if not for the limitations of this reality marble, could even surpass him. These were the great heroes who could withstand noble phantasms. They stood locked in a stalemate, continuing to do so until Gilgamesh could draw his EA. It seems this is the best you can do, King of Conqueror. Very well, let me show you the scene you should have witnessed. Bad news. King of Conqueror shouted, "Warriors, stop him." Swish, 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 swish. Countless spears were thrown towards Gilgamesh. However, shields appearing from all directions perfectly defended against the soldiers' attacks. Gilgamesh took out the key of the king's law in his hand and analyzed the world. Then, he pulled out that sword from it. Alalalala King of Conqueror charged forward, and surrounding him were his personal guards, the strongest few among his forces. They rushed towards the reign of noble phantasms. They blocked those noble phantasms with their swords and spears. Approaching. Closing in. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. The soldiers used their hands to break and take away the shields in front of them. Sturdy ones that couldn't be destroyed were taken away by any means. These shields were quite peculiar. Even without releasing their true names, they had various effects. They would ignite upon contact. They would poison upon contact. They would freeze upon contact. Attacks would be reflected. Arrows would break upon contact. And so on, countless various abilities. Perhaps even the King of Heroes himself didn't know how many abilities there were. But King of Conqueror's soldiers were fearless as well. One person carried away a shield. If one person couldn't, 2 people would. If 2 died, the third would continue. With this indomitable spirit, they finally opened a path for King of Conqueror. Thunder shattered the last shield. The soldiers used their bodies to protect King of Conqueror from the fatal arrows. Alalalalala, prepare yourself, King of Heroes. It's too late, King of Conqueror. Gilgamesh said, watching the chariot now close at hand. He raised the sword in his hand. In the next moment, a crimson rift-like radiance spread out in all directions from Gilgamesh's position. It blew away the countless soldiers and King of Conqueror. King of Conqueror fell from the sky. His chariot had already partially collapsed from the attack, and the divine bull pulling the chariot had died. Bad. King of Conqueror stood up, summoned his beloved horse, and looked at the current situation. No. It's not over yet. My journey isn't over until the very end. Ryder. Awaken EA. Enuma Elish. So, this is the scene of the world's collapse. HMPH, take a good look, is this what you wanted to see? I'll generously show you the collapse of the world. Seeing this, Kazuya truly understood the difference between these dreamlike places and some parts of reality. Naturally, he had seen such scenes in his dreams. But the impact was much greater. In this scene, the sky cracked little by little, and the earth directly split apart from all directions. The only place one could stand was beneath Gilgamesh's feet. With him at the center, the earth began to crumble and vanish in all directions. Endless sand seemed to sink into an abyss. Upon closer inspection, the land beneath Gilgamesh's feet was no longer a desert, but the ruins of Ryudo Temple. The surroundings were the same. But the reality marble had not completely collapsed, some power was resisting the impact. My unmatched army, this is the final strike. ISCE, a command spells. Gilgamesh looked at the youth behind King of Conqueror, the command spells on his hand had completely disappeared. This was the final battle. No need to hold back, no need to preserve anything. Just offer everything in this battle. Boom, boom. Finally, the reality marble slowly disappeared. Gilgamesh touched the wound on his neck where a spear had pierced him and smiled. Interesting. Truly interesting. If not for my current body, I might have truly been done in. In the end, I failed, King of Conqueror sighed. Just as he was about to say something more, his expression suddenly changed, and he pushed Waver behind him. Be careful, kid. In the next moment, an arrow from a distance pierced directly through King of Conqueror's chest, the tremendous force nearly bisecting him at the waist. Rider. Waver hesitated for a moment, then shouted in grief and rushed over. Damned mongrel. How dare you lay a hand on my prey? Gilgamesh turned around and saw the figure standing in front of the Greater Grail. The man's face wasn't visible because it was covered with cloth, only parts of it were revealed. It was clear it was a man from those revealed parts. He held a bow in his hand. And on the ground nearby was Berserker's axe sword. You mongrel. Not even death is enough to atone for your actions. Let me shatter your corpse into 10,000 pieces. In an instant, the rain of countless noble phantasms rained down on this unknown man. No, not unknown. This appearance was known to Kazuya. Kazuya recognized him. Trouble. Why did he suddenly appear? Isn't he the one who counters Gilgamesh? Did he just arrive in time for that? In the midst of that endless rain of noble phantasms, the man didn't offer the slightest resistance. He just stood there. Usually, he should have been torn into pieces by now. But he wasn't. He stood there completely unharmed, not a scratch on him. Kazuya was certain. That figure, that noble phantasm. Indeed, that is, Heracles, the archer class. 146 The final battle. What did you mean by Heracles, the archer class, that you just mentioned? Gilgamesh looked at the situation and furrowed his brow slightly, but he remained calm. He inquired about the words from Kazuya. If he still had another noble phantasm, the Sha Nakba Imuru, he could discreetly use it to see the current situation. However, his strength was limited since he was summoned by 2 command spells. Well, though he's in the archer class, something seems off. I'll tell you what I know, Kazuya explained. He was originally summoned as an archer, but after being contaminated by the black mud, he abandoned his glory and took on the form of an avenger. However, Heracles was originally a berserker. So what's going on? Kazuya pondered for a moment, and then the situation changed. Ryder's withdrawal was inevitable. Behind Heracles, the Holy Grail had absorbed 5 heroic spirits and had fully formed. At the same time, Heracles shot several arrows with his bow, but Gilgamesh's treasure, the king's treasure, blocked them all. In the next moment, he dropped his bow and rushed forward with a sword in hand. ISCE, Gilgamesh laughed. It's a noble phantasm that nullifies thrown noble phantasms. No, the noble phantasm he currently wields isn't the 12 labors, but the 12 glories. It's a noble phantasm that materializes past glories, and among them, the one that nullifies countless noble phantasms is the fabric he's wearing, a noble phantasm called the pelt of the divine beast. It renders all items created by humans ineffective, which means noble phantasms are useless. Legend has it that Heracles conquered the 12 labors. So, this must be the first of the 12 labors. Gilgamesh smiled, as if he had seen something worth looking forward to. Kazuya remained silent. If it was true, then Gilgamesh was in a highly unfavorable position. Gilgamesh's vast array of noble phantasms directly countered Heracles' 12 labors, and now Heracles wielded the 12 glories, with the pelt of the divine beast, effectively countering Gilgamesh's king's treasure. In his prime, Gilgamesh might have had a treasure specifically designed to deal with such noble phantasms, but now, aside from Vamana, Chains of Heaven, and Enuma Elish, he couldn't unleash the true names of his other noble phantasms. Moreover, there was no noble phantasm like the Sha Nakba Imiru. This was because he had summoned himself in a form that aimed to conserve command spells, and now it seemed like he was in a dilemma. Boom! Heracles struck heavily, and Gilgamesh used his sword to block the blow, but he was sent flying, and blood flowed from his arm. However, thanks to Kazuya's immortality, he quickly recovered. Heracles prepared to strike again, and countless chains wound around him. However, when they reached him, while they didn't break, they were still repelled, including the chains of heaven. In other words, Gilgamesh could only harm him with his fists, as his noble phantasms were rendered ineffective. He was completely countered. Quick, use EA, King of Heroes. EA should work, Kazuya suggested. This noble phantasm indeed nullified noble phantasms but not those released without their true names. In other words, for instance, Arthur's Excalibur couldn't harm him, much like the chains of heaven, but when the Excalibur's true name was invoked, it could deal damage. No, this mongrel isn't worth my use of EA. He lacks the corresponding radiance. Gilgamesh insisted, not to mention, the current Heracles has completely killed my desire for that. He doesn't deserve it. Meanwhile, he searched for an opportunity to defeat Heracles before him. Damn it! Kazuya clenched his teeth and didn't say anything more. Another chance. Now there were only 13 minutes left, originally 23 minutes, but since they had used Chains of Heaven once, there were now 13 minutes. Another 2 minutes. If there were still 2 minutes left, and the battle didn't end, Kazuya would forcibly take control of his bodies using Chains of Heaven, Enkidu. But Gilgamesh also had his chances. He observed the battle and noticed something. The Heracles before him was still a berserker, lacking intelligence. His weapons remained those of a berserker. Currently, only one of the 12 glories had manifested. Of course, it was the one that Gilgamesh found most challenging. It entirely countered Gilgamesh's noble phantasms. Now, Gilgamesh, an archer who relied on long-range projectile noble phantasms, could only attempt to defeat Heracles with his fists or use Chains of Heaven. But Gilgamesh stubbornly refused to use it. For Gilgamesh, the decision to use Chains of Heaven depended on the enemy's strength and whether the stage was suitable. Heracles had the strength now, but the stage was not. Nothing else to do. You mongrel. What are you planning? Gilgamesh's expression darkened. His hands, uncontrollably, took out his own noble phantasm Chains of Heaven, Enkidu. But he couldn't control his body. Damn mongrel, stop it. Kazuya, who was controlling Gilgamesh's body, let out a slight groan. He felt a severe mental shock. Gilgamesh's presence was eroding him. There's no more time. Kazuya gritted his teeth, Enuma Elish. He didn't have the energy to strike a pose or recite lines. He had to release his noble phantasm as quickly as possible. And he didn't even have the energy to aim at the fast-moving Heracles. So, he didn't aim. There was something Heracles would definitely protect, and that's what Kazuya targeted, the Greater Grail. Roar. Heracles roared, and although his expression was hidden by the fabric covering his face, the anger in his voice was evident. Then, Enuma Elish was unleashed at full power. The torrent of wind blades surged toward Heracles, heading for the Greater Grail behind him. Boom! Ryudo Temple exploded again. 147 comes to a close. It's done. Looking at the thoroughly destroyed Heracles, Lesser Grail, and the surroundings near the Greater Grail, all of which had been plowed through in the ruins of Ryudo Temple, Kazuya breathed a sigh of relief. If Heracles with the complete 12 glories had been there, maybe he could have blocked this blow. But in the end, he only knew 4 out of the 12 glories. Because the novel featuring his appearance hasn't finished serialization yet. What he got here was all incomplete information, so he wasn't sure about the remaining 8. But at least it's over. In the next moment, he plunged his consciousness into the deepest part of his own heart. You damn mongrel. Gilgamesh, now able to control his body again, grumbled, give me an answer. Mongrel. However, there was no response. Damn it. Fine, this time I'll let you off, but next time. I won't spare you, brat. Gilgamesh said, and because using EA consumed 10 minutes. The final minute quickly passed as well. Gilgamesh left Kazuya's body and returned to the throne of heroes. Huff, Kazuya, revealing his original bodies, breathed a sigh of relief. The red light on the back of his hands from the command spells disappeared quickly. Now, only 5 remained. Because the Holy Grail had disappeared. As a caster, he would have to leave his body. Not now, at least not now. It was still dangerous here, he could clearly feel the countless gazes. If caster disappeared from his body, he wouldn't be able to handle these people right now. So, next, run. Find a way to keep the command spells and a part of caster's abilities fixed on himself using the method he had prepared from the beginning. At least preserve his noble phantasmagoria of a perfect knight. After all, this was a noble phantasm that had been sublimated based on his legend. The possibility of it being retained was quite high. As long as he kept this noble phantasm, if something unexpected happened, he would have the ability to break through. Waver, who had been trembling on the side, breathed a sigh of relief at the current situation. Is this a Holy Grail war without a victor? Huff, Emiya Kiritsugu let out a long sigh, as if he wanted to vomit out his heart. He put the sniper rifle aside and lit a cigarette from his pocket. After taking a puff, he placed it in front of himself, watching it burn continuously. It's finally done. The Greater Grail was destroyed, not completely, but it seemed to be shattered about halfway. In this case, Emiya Kiritsugu hesitated slightly. There was still a possibility of restoration. If the Mages Association went all out. And now, he saw several people walking towards the ruins of Ryudo Temple together with Kaneth. Indeed, the association is eyeing the Holy Grail, for the continuation of the ley lines. Emiya Kiritsugu looked over there, not thinking that the disappearance of the mystery would be a bad thing. If the mystery disappeared, the magus of the present would all become ordinary people. In that case, they would have to abide by the laws of this world. Even if some of them still had privileges due to their current power, they would be a minority. They would just become ordinary people with power. They would be much safer. Well, forget it. I don't want to care about what happens next. Although he said this, Emiya Kiritsugu didn't know if he could resist getting involved at that time. You survived, Waver, Kaneth said to his student, looking at him. First, congratulations. Yes. Waver calmed down and said, finally, it's over, the Holy Grail War. No. The Holy Grail War has just begun, Kaneth said with a smile. Huh, what do you mean? Waver was puzzled. Could it be? Yes. Although the Greater Grail has been significantly damaged, it's just right. With the remaining Holy Grails and the information obtained from the Tasaka family and Einsburn, we can completely reconstruct a new Greater Grail. But at that time, all of this will be for the use of the Mages Association. Kaneth turned back and said, what about it? The head of the Einsburn family. The current head of the Einsburn family, Jubstachate von Einsburn, stood in front of the destroyed Greater Grail and remained silent for a long time before saying, it can be reconstructed. Ha ha ha, that's good. So, this Holy Grail War has been confirmed. Kaneth laughed heartily. The victor is not anyone else, but as the Mages Association. So, we can start preparing for the next one, said Mavis Clara to the people present. Prepare for the next Holy Grail War. It will be led by the Clock Tower, a battle to ensure the continued prosperity of Magecraft. Success. Kazuya, covered in sweat, looked at the 3 command spells on his hands and breathed a sigh of relief. Using 2 command spells, he summoned the witch from fate, Stay Night, Medea, who helped him fix the command spells on himself, preventing him from disappearing due to the end of the Holy Grail War. At the same time, he also worked on successfully attaching his own noble phantasm to himself. 2 command spells, summoning Medea for 180 minutes, because it was essentially using 3 command spells for summoning. Being a native of this world, he could save 1 command spell for use. The result, as expected, was as he had anticipated. He managed to fix the command spells, imprinting his own noble phantasm onto the command spells, which originally belonged to him, and it took him over 2 hours to barely complete it. As a price. After all, he was resident of this world, and he couldn't fight for control of the body to ensure her full assistance. So, he made her a promise. Of course, it didn't need to be fulfilled right now. Now, he had finally succeeded. 3 command spells. This was equivalent to having 3 chances to save his lives. In this era, facing Magus, the strength of a heroic spirit was overwhelming. He could easily win and escape. The 3 command spells on his hands gave him this possibility. As for what came next, first, he would return to Morio Town, then talk about acquiring the animation production company. However, I wonder how I'll die in the future. After all, only after dying can I become a heroic spirit. No. On second thought, I really want to know how I'll die. If that's the case, well, that wouldn't be bad. If he followed the same path as himself, when he died, it would be the end of everything, but it could also be the start of something new. 148 A New Beginning. London. Clock Tower. Tasaka Tokiomi held the clock tower's report in his hand. I see, is that so? If that's the case, there won't be any more concerns for the Tasaka family. Next, although the Mages Association would hold the Holy Grail War once again, the winning champion was already predetermined. 7 Magus would be selected within the clock tower, and it was just a process to summon the 7 heroic spirits and then immediately have them commit suicide using command spells. The 7 heroic spirits would instantly fill the Greater Grail. Then, use this power to fulfill the wish to continue the ley lines. In this way, a fixed ritual could be completed. With the financial power of the clock tower, combined with excellent ley lines, perhaps they could hold the Holy Grail War every 10 years or even less. No, it should be called a ritual. It had little to do with war. However, Tasaka Tokiomi had a doubt, would it really go this smoothly? Wouldn't there be any unexpected occurrences? Kazuya was unaware of what was happening in the clock tower. If he knew, it would certainly feel familiar. The Holy Grail War. A 7-on-7 Holy Grail War. A total of 14 heroic spirits. However, unlike in Fate Apocrypha, where Yug Millennia had 7 masters, this time, the Mages Association provided 7 masters. And then, it was time for the Holy Grail War to begin. The other 7 masters would be chosen high individuals outside the Mages Association. However, all of this had nothing to do with him. He was back in Morio Town. What's this? As soon as Kazuya opened the door, he furrowed his brows slightly. Boldly placed on the table in the living room was an envelope. On crystal-like paper was a bright red seal pressed into it, with a design of wheels and eyeballs. After opening it, a series of flowing English cursive letters were written on it. It mentioned inviting him to their banquet and provided an address. At the end of the letter was the sender's name. Hey, being targeted, huh? Kazuya pushed the letter aside and squinted slightly. He knew about the so-called Mystic Eye Collection train. This was an officially introduced location in the novel, Lord L. Meloi's case files. It was something left behind by a dead apostate named Rose Cn. Although not detailed, in the world before he crossed over, Rose N was generally considered a dead apostle named Rita Rose N, the 15th among the dead apostle ancestors. Its function was like its name, collecting various mystic eyes, a train traveling through European forests, exhibiting hatches of mystic eyes every year and holding auctions. The Mystic Eye Collection train was responsible for the auctioning, removing, and transplanting of mystic eyes. It was the only known entity in the Type Moon world capable of transplanting mystic eyes to date. However, that dead apostle, Rose N, seemed to have abandoned or forgotten about the train a long time ago. Although the people on the train were still loyally carrying out the task their master had originally assigned them and awaited their master's return. Being targeted for the so-called clairvoyance, huh? Kazuya touched the command spells on the back of his hand. He had a glove with exposed fingertips on his right hand, covering the back of his hand, feeling the patterns on it. His mind calmed slightly. Going there was a necessity. Otherwise, in the history of this train, there were cases of people unable to leave. The result was having their eyes gouged out, and their bodies found somewhere. However, it wasn't always the case. Some people willingly asked to have their mystic eyes removed. Because many mystic eyes were uncontrollable and absorbed the holder's mana, ultimately leading to their death. The Mystic Eye Collection train was a good place for them in that regard. However, though that was said, the Mystic Eye Collection train wasn't an invincible entity. For example, during a certain Mystic Eye Collection train auction in the 1980s, Tuko Aozuki and her familiar, Luff Beowulf, disrupted the auction. Since then, the Mystic Eye Collection train expanded its cruises from the Nordic region to all of Europe. Manager Rose N also found a proxy manager to take care of the train. It was around that time that Rose N began to forget about the train. In other words, as long as one had that level of power, even the Mystic Eye Collection train couldn't do much to you. And Kazuya possessed that kind of power. Even if it was only for a short period, he still had the qualifications. Perfect, I can see if I can buy a Mystic Eye or something then. Judging from the situation in that novel, I can afford several $100 million. Plus, there's a year, the invitation's date is 1989, by then, my assets will increase. He didn't care about money. After all, he had Golden Rule A rank. Money wasn't a concern. However, when thinking of Lord L. Meloi's case files, he had a bit of a desire to go and see the famed Gold Princess and Silver Princess. It was said that just their beauty alone brought them close to the root. Showing their faces was equivalent to a large-scale silencing witchcraft, silencing everyone who saw them instantly. A bit curious. These were things he didn't include in Fate Zero's sequel, when he drew it. Back then, he only drew the first part, like briefly explained what happened to Waver later, and nothing else was actually drawn. If he could see such faces. If he could draw such faces in the manga. Just thinking about it felt interesting. However, that was for later. For now, in the magical world, the first thing he needed to do was figure out how to deal with the Mystic Eye Collection train. By then, he might be able to buy a good high-level Mystic Eye. As for the money to buy the Mystic Eye, he didn't lack anything but money. In the visible world, the first thing to do now was to acquire the animation company Gainax, which he had set his sights on, and then start producing the long-awaited JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. 149. Acquiring Gainax. We've arrived, Emiya Kiritsugu said to the young man beside him, looking at the residence in front of them. What is this place? The young man asked, looking around. This will be your future home. How about it? Emiya Kiritsugu asked. Yeah, I'll go get grandma now, the young man said, running to the back to bring his grandmother, who had just got off the car. By the way, let's change your name for the future. How about Emiya Shi? No, let's call you Emiya Mumi, Emiya Kiritsugu said with a smile. Mumi. What does it mean? The young man had hair of two colors, red and white. The tips of his hair were slightly gray, and if he were to be called a young man, the area of white was a bit too large. In Japanese, Mumul means nameless. But his hair was indeed these colors. You'll know in the future, Emiya Kiritsugu smiled and knocked on the door in front of them. After a while, a woman opened the door. Welcome back, Kiritsugu. Yeah, Emiya Kiritsugu nodded. Just as he was about to say something, he heard a surprised exclamation. Kiritsugu, you're back. Irisville hurriedly ran over and said, Ah, who are these two? Mumchi. Emiya Mumchi, this is his grandmother who takes care of him. Hello, dear. The old woman tried to say but couldn't remember her name. Hello, I'm Irisville, Irisville said with a smile. Yeah, hello, Miss Irisville. Irisville looked at Emiya Mumi and said to Emiya Kiritsugu, he is. Ah, let's go inside and talk, Emiya Kiritsugu said and walked inside. Dad Ilyusville heard the commotion outside and ran out, saying, You're back, Dad. Yes, I'm back, Princess, Emiya Kiritsugu said, squatting down and opening his arms to hug Ilyusville, saying, How does it feel to come out? Outside, it's really big, and there are many fun things. Ilyusville patted Emiya Kiritsugu's shoulder and gestured to let herself down. Emiya Kiritsugu did so. They walked forward together. Ilyusville was next to Emiya Mumi, closing one eye as if observing something, and then said, Hey, what's your name? Me. I'm called Emiya Mumi now. Ah, Dad. Why is he also called Emiya? Ilyusville quickly ran over and complained. Well, he's a child your dad adopted, and he'll be your playmate in the future. He's your little brother, and as an older sister, you should take good care of him, Emiya Kiritsugu said with a smile. Huh, I'm a big sister. Ilyasville's eyes lit up, and she ran over to Emiya, who was noticeably taller, and standing on her tiptoes, she patted the boy and said, "Did you hear that? From now on, I'm your big sister, so rest assured. Ilyasville is very strong, and I'll protect you." "Well, but I'm probably taller, right?" Emiya hesitated for a moment. "If we're talking about protection, it should be me protecting you. You're so annoying. So annoying. So annoying. Fine, you think you're stronger, let's duel. HMPH, let me show you the power of Lady Ilyasville." Watching Ilyasville and Emiya playing around, Emiya Kiritsugu smiled and felt much more relaxed. In the future, he didn't have to think about so many things anymore. His dream had been shattered, but he felt, this wasn't bad. The rest. Oh right, now I can go find Kurakawa Kazuya. He should be back by now. Okada Toshio took a sip of coffee, feeling slightly excited. Today was the day he was meeting the acquirer as agreed. If it succeeded, everyone at Gainax would get a large amount of money. This was a lifesaver for them, who were currently in astronomical debt, owing over hundreds of millions of yen. However, he couldn't be too sure about the outcome. After all, the situation was dire, and their debt to Bandai had been increasing. They were bitter and burdened by a heavy weight. Bandai was also in a difficult situation, having wasted so much money. And they weren't sure if they could pay it back. If they couldn't, wouldn't the money be borrowed in vain? So, at this moment, someone was willing to acquire them, which surprised him immensely. He wondered why someone would take such a big risk to acquire them. Anyone with insight could see their current plight. This was a complete loss, wasn't it? Exactly, even Okada Toshio himself didn't think there was much of a future, just struggling and striving to pay off the debt within his lifetime. But now, a savior had appeared, as long as they could complete the deal today. Initially, when he received a call from a Jump editor, he had answered out of habit, although he wasn't fully convinced. But during this period, there weren't many fraudulent calls, so he answered. However, he still didn't believe it much. But after all, it was said to be from Jump. He could just go to Jump to confirm. And indeed, it was true. "Nice to see you again, Okada-san." Okada Toshio looked up and saw 3 people who had already come over. "Hello, Iwamoto-san. Ah, who are these 2? Iwamoto smiled and introduced them. "This is Kurakawa-sensei, Kurakawa Kazuya, the one who is going to acquire Gainax this time. And this is Yamazaki-san, Kurakawa-sensei's private lawyer, Mitsuko Yamazaki." "Hello, hello," Okada Toshio hurriedly said, but why did he feel a bit familiar with Kurakawa Kazuya's name? As expected, Iwamoto continued, "Kurakawa-sensei is also a mangaka serializing in Jump." Huh, Okada Toshio was stunned for a moment. So it's Kurakawa-sensei. "Ah, could I trouble sensei for an autograph? I'm a fan of your manga Fate. Is any time good for this? Moreover, after today, we will be working together, so there will be plenty of opportunities in the future." Kazuya smiled and said, "All right, have a seat. Let's discuss the details of the acquisition." "Yeah, I understand." Okada Toshio was, after all, the president of a company, even though he had been in the position for a short time and was heavily in debt and couldn't stand up straight, he was still the president. "Please take a look at this," Okada Toshio said, placing a document in front of Kazuya. "This is the agreement we discussed and agreed upon within our company. 150 Acquisition outcome. Gainax. Today, almost everyone did nothing but sit by the phone, waiting for the call. I wonder if it will be successful," Hiroshi Yamaga sighed, staring at the phone in front of him. "It should be fine," Yoshiyuki Sadamoto said, adjusting his glasses. According to what was discussed earlier, the acquiring party seems to have a lot of money. If needed, we can accept a bit less. Hideaki, what do you think? Well, hasn't on my feeling. Hideaki Anno was about to speak when the phone in front of him rang. He quickly picked it up. Is it the president? How are things going? He was also quite nervous. As for this call, it was prepared in advance and only people within the company were aware of it. It was impossible for outsiders to know. At this time, the only person who could call was their president, Okada Toshio. Well, Okada Toshio on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment and said, "The situation is a bit unexpected." "What happened?" Yoshiyuki Sadamoto leaned over and hastily said into the phone, "Did they think the amount is too much?" "No, it's not about the money, or rather, money seems to be a small issue from their perspective, actually. Most of the agreements are acceptable. Let me share my perspective." Kazuya closed the file and said, "First, regarding the price. I can increase it by an additional 500 million yen for you." Okada Toshio almost spit out his water. It's one thing to increase the amount voluntarily, but this was unbelievable. He didn't know what to say. This was the first time he had heard of someone voluntarily adding money. "Furthermore, as a condition, of course, I will have some requests," Kazuya continued. "The purpose of acquiring you is simple, to produce anime, high-quality anime. That's why I've set my sights on you. After the acquisition, all anime production will be funded by me, and your salaries will be linked to the level of anime produced. However, if I believe it's not good enough, you will have to redo it until I am satisfied. Here are the details." Kazuya gestured to his lawyer. The lawyer, Mitsuko Yamazaki, immediately took out the prepared documents. "Please take a look." Okada Toshio's heart was pounding. From his tone, he seemed to see familiar faces. It was when he had just graduated, hadn't yet owed anyone money, and was struggling for his dreams. But at that time, he didn't have money, so he had to borrow money to realize his dreams. Now, the person in front of him was different. The way he spoke made it seem like he was drowning in money. His expression seemed to say, "I lack everything, except money." Okada Toshio envied him greatly. If only he had so much money, that would be great. Then he opened the folder in front of him. First, the acquisition amount can be increased to 2.5 billion. In an instant, everyone in front of the phone erupted. "Long live the president! Long live the president!" Calm down, it's not over yet." Okada Toshio sighed and said. It took about 2 minutes for the people on the other end of the phone to quiet down. Even so, everyone squeezed in front of the phone was still extremely excited, their faces flushed. Then, regarding the requirements, first, we want everything to stay, not a single thing missing, so the idea of taking the money and leaving is not acceptable. Then, in terms of the anime production budget, we free to spend as much as we want. Hundreds of billions, thousands of billions, it's all think. Hold on, Hideaki Anno quickly interrupted, wait a minute, did you say, 1,000, instead of 100? No, I meant it, Okada Toshio said, and his heart was also beating rapidly. It's really hundreds of billions, thousands of billions, according to him, whatever Monsi can solve is not a problem. Could it be the government trying to acquire us? With so much money, they suspected that the other side was a whole country. Previously, they had spent a total of 800 million yen on their animated film, Royal Space Force, which was considered an explosion of anime, and it was a movic that lasted for over 120 minutes. Now, they were adding 2 or 3 zeros after that 800 million. Suddenly, they felt like they were in a dream. I don't know. But of course, there are conditions and it's not an endless burning of money. For example, according to him, if the anime we make is not satisfying to him, no matter how others see it, we have to redo it until he's satisfied. Of course, this is for the anime he wants to make. Aside from that, we can make anime we want, and for the budget of those anime, it's 1 billion yen minus the cost of making a 25-minute episode. In other words, we can spend the rest as we please. But if one episode exceeds 10 billion, then there's nothing left. If we want to keep burning Monsi, we can, but we won't get the remaining portion. Check this for a rough idea. 10 billion. The people in front of the phone erupted again. Just 25 minutes. Our most expensive animation, Royal Space Force, only cost 800 million. And that was a movie lasting over 120 minutes. Until now, it's at most saying that it didn't make money, who could say it wasn't done well? Even at the highest level of Royal Space Force, for a 25-minute animation, you can't burn 1 billion, and 500 million is already quite a lot. We can spend the rest freely. Unconsciously, their concept of money had been corrupted. They had been thinking about how to pay off their debts of several hundred million yen. Now they were thinking, it's only 800 million. Yeah, according to the above conditions, 1/10 of the remaining money is our salary, and 9/10 can be spent freely on the animation. Okada Toshio said, I feel, the conditions are good, what about you? Of course, we agree. The phone was bustling with excitement. But all the voices were agreeing. With money raining down like this, dreams could still be realized, where else could you find this? I can't believe I'm not dreaming, Hideaki Anno muttered to himself and grinned. Hey, what are you hitting me for? I'm telling you, we're not dreaming now, Hiroshi Yamaga said and then laughed. Not just him, everyone in front of the phone laughed. They laughed out loud. Today was like the happiest holiday. Listening to the laughter on the other end of the phone, Okada Toshio also laughed. He felt good about this. If things went like this, the burden on him would be lifted. Dreams could still move forward, and all of a sudden, he had switched from a small wooden boat to a large ship. This feeling was really great. No, I can't relax until I've signed the contract. I can't be too happy, I can't be too happy.